Softr has just released brand new functionality around conditional forms to improve the form experience for your users. Hi, I'm Dan Lehman from AutomationHelpers.com, and we help companies like yours get automated with portals, apps, and integrations. If you're currently using a form builder without conditional logic, you're probably running into one of three issues. Number one might be you really need that conditional functionality, and so you've actually created multiple copies of all of these forms to try to capture all the information you need. The problem is if you need to add a new field to any of these forms, now you have to do that 15 times, and it's really hard to maintain that. Or number two, you create this huge form with lots and lots of extra questions that your users don't care about. And bad form hygiene leads people to look for outside options by skipping your forms altogether. Or the third option swings the entire opposite way. You just have one big text area field and you say, how can we help you? But the problem here is, how do you have any structured data? You don't know how you can apply your SLAs or who to route the form to. If you find yourself in any of these three situations, Softr Conditional Forms is going to be immensely helpful for you. In Softr, we can add a new block, search for form, and we've got this new option for conditional form. Now, the first thing we need to do is choose where we're sending our data. So we've got some different options here. In this case, we're just going to write it to our data source. For this use case, we have our table of tickets. Let's change our success message. The support team will be in contact according to your SLA. We could add an action, like maybe redirect the user to our knowledge base. We'll update our submission button. A little Easter egg here. We've got some nice new form layouts, so you can see some additional options. I really like this one with the half image, so let's change how this looks. And you'll see these buttons for next and previous. These become enabled once we create our different steps. Let's click on the questions tab, and this is where we'll see both steps and sections. Steps are going to be like the different pages that we see on the screen, and sections can group together different form inputs. We'll be able to create rules around both our steps and our sections. So let's click on our full name field, and instead of a single line of text, we're going to change this to a dropdown, and I'm going to map this in my data source to the employee. We'll sync this here so that we have a nice dropdown of our different employees at the company. I'm going to collapse this full name field, and let's add another field here. This will also be a dropdown, and we're going to map this to our category field. We'll update the label, and at this point, we might want to collapse our whole section. And we can actually label our sections here by double-clicking it. The second section we'll call hardware subcategory, and we'll add one more section here, and we'll call this software subcategory. We can relabel our step as well, and we'll call this category. Under this hardware section, it created another field for us just out of the box. Let's just delete this one, and we'll add a new field. It'll be a dropdown. We'll map it to hardware subcategory, and we'll do the same thing in our software subcategory section. We'll expand this. We'll change it to a dropdown. We'll map it to our software subcategory. Okay, so far we're capturing information about the user, and then we're trying to understand the category of their topic, of their issue that they're experiencing. We have 6 different categories to choose from, but for now, we're just going to set this up for the categories of hardware or software. And with this additional information, we have certain questions that we're going to ask if it's a hardware-related issue, and other questions that we're going to ask if it's a software-related issue. So let's go ahead and add a new step. Now remember, before we were dealing with sections, the smaller component, the steps are the bigger components. These are the different pages that we're seeing on the screen. I'm going to relabel this to hardware questions. And let's update this field. Again, this one's going to be a dropdown. And now we're going to map this to ask the question, where is the hardware located? And we'll give this a label of location. Let's add another field. This time this will be a long text, and we'll map this to what issue are you experiencing. So this is what the step will look like if we're experiencing a hardware issue. Now you can, if you want, add a title and description to this step as well as an image. So we've got some ways to make this a nicer experience for our users as well. Let's add one more step here, and this will be about software questions. We'll change it to a dropdown, and we'll map this to the question about what browser they're using, and we'll add one more field. This will be that long text again, and we'll ask about their issue. And this should be enough information to get us started with building our conditional logic. Hey everybody, just a quick note. When we initially got our hands on this, there was this little button that we clicked for the logic, and now there's a dedicated logic tab instead, which we absolutely love. So just a heads up as you're watching the video that there's one quick change here. So to access this, you can see this either at the step or at the section level. If you hover, you'll see the trash icon, and then you'll see this icon, which is often used for visibility. We can click on it there, Or we could click on a section. Again, we hover and we see that icon. So from either place here, we click it. This is going to take us to that conditional logic path builder. So now you can see we have this really nice visual canvas where we can take a look at our steps and our sections. So here I've got my step of category, and I can click on individual sections within this. Now you can move around your canvas here, so you can drag and drop. You can click on different areas. You can zoom in and out, but this isn't itself actually drag and droppable. So we're not reordering sections by clicking and dragging that up. That would happen in the builder on the other screen itself. So let's go ahead and build our logic. On our first section here, we don't need to do anything. This is going to always be visible. But the hardware subcategory, if we click this, we don't want it to always be visible. We want this to be based on the user's decision of that category. So we can click on the options here. Instead of always visible, we'll say this is only visible when, and we can add a condition here. Now, the nice part is that this does support multiple conditions, so we can add an additional condition if we need it. And we'll say if, and when we click on this, we've got two different options. We can see information both about the logged in user as well as based on the responses of the user in this form answer. So an example of information from the logged in user, let's say that you might be a manager who's filling out a ticket. And in this ticket, you're making a request for hardware or software for your team, something that has dollars attached to this. And you as a manager have the ability to allocate budget for that. Well, maybe you'd only make a certain section's questions visible if that person is a manager and you're asking them how to allocate that budget. And if they're not a manager, you simply wouldn't display that section. Instead, they could take the form submission and route that to the manager after the fact. In this case, we're going to base this on the form answer. So you'll see this is already broken down into our different sections that we have. We're going to click on category, and we'll say if this includes any of, and we're just going to add a custom value here to say hardware. And we can click into software and we'll do the same thing. We'll say this is only visible, add a condition. Again, we'll choose form answer. From here, we'll choose category, includes any of, and we'll add a custom value for software. Okay, so now in this first page or the first step of the form that we're seeing, we're going to see this additional field either for hardware or software. But what happens next? What step should they go to after they've answered this question? So here we have a step for hardware questions and a step for software questions, but we actually need to click on the category, the very first step that we have, because this is where we dictate what paths are taken after this step. So let's add a new path, and we'll say that the users are going to go to software questions if the category is software. And we'll add another path that users will go to submit. And technically, we'd probably create additional paths here for the other categories, or if they didn't actually select one of those categories, but we're going to keep this simple for now. So if they go to software questions, then after this, they're going to go to submit after that. Or if they go to hardware questions, this is trying to have us go by default over, you can see next door, go to software questions. That doesn't make sense here. So we're also going to have them go to submit. And now we've got this really nice diagram. We start with this category. Based on our answers, we display these relevant sections. Based on that, we go to the next step, depending on that category. And then we submit our form. Let's go ahead and preview our form. We'll click on the preview button. Now we can pick an employee at our company. Let's choose our category of hardware. And you can see this next section automatically appeared of our hardware subcategory. So we can choose an option here. We'll click the next button. And now we have our next step where it's asking us about the location of our hardware. So I'll say this is my home office. We'll describe our issue and we can create that ticket. Or we could go back a step here and change our category. Instead of hardware, we'll change that to software. Now we see the software section. We can choose a different value here. Click next. And now we've got a new step. It's asking us information about our browser. I hope you're as excited as I am about all the possibilities with Softr's new conditional forms. If you have any questions about your own Softr setup, don't hesitate to reach out to our website at automationhelpers.com, where we're offering free 30-minute consultations.